smiling. The title is Life in the Computer Age. His objectives are have a humorous opening and closing story. Ensure that the closing story recaps the main points. Use a smooth and effective delivery. The time for his speech is 5 to 7 minutes, Mr. Timer. Our speaker is an ATMS Silver Toastmaster and has been a member of this club since 1989. His only qualification for humorous speech is that he looks funny. Help me welcome Mr. Jim Lindenfeld.
Thank you, Madam Toastmasters. Fellow Toastmasters and all of our guests, I saw an ad, Boeing Airlines, 100 years since the first commercial flight in 2016. And can you imagine a 200-yard little bubble jump in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, to 100 years later being disappointed when we get to Pluto and we're not getting back the razor-sharp images we thought we were going to get. 100 years. I think I was first made aware of the power of technology back during a Super Bowl. Because during that Super Bowl, Victoria's Secret decided to launch their website. It was a perfect plan. They showed scantily clad models to men who were drinking beer and eating snacks during a Super Bowl, and told them if they wanted to see more, all they had to go was to victoriasecret.com. It was a perfect plan except for one small detail that they didn't realize. More households had internet access than they could ever have imagined, and most of them immediately clicked on victoriasecret.com and crashed that server in the first 30 seconds. And I remember that. And I remember that very well. And I remember being out there, and I have been involved in IT systems now for the last 30 years. And I would say back then, everyone was perennially skeptical about the power of IT. People said the internet was a fad. People said that online shopping would never last. People said pads were a fad when they first came out. How many of you now are perennially suspicious of internet technology? How many of you now think the internet is a fad? Think about it. I walked in this evening, there were a couple of questions that we had to have answered. We had to have answered right now. Rashid whipped out his cell phone, got the answer to one. Kim whipped out her cell phone, got the answer to the other one. Google search is as ingrained in our lifestyle as we could possibly imagine. What about those apps on your iPad or your Android device? You're either entertaining yourself, searching or informing yourself, sharpening your mind in one way, shape, or another, watching your favorite sports game. It's absolutely incredible how connected we all are. Do you know how that all started, that connection that we have to sports? He was a billionaire, Mark Cuban, was going to Indiana University. And he really wanted a way to find how he could listen to IU basketball games. And so he invented streaming radio media over the internet. And that concept was like, wow, if we can do radio, we can do video. Just think of that. And then there's the downside. How many of you have had to replace your credit card recently because your stores were hacked? Target was hacked. Very famous one, but virtually every major retailer has been hacked. The United States government has been hacked, all of your tax records, all of your Social Security records. How many of you are scared to death now that your life is no longer private because of the internet? A few people are. In fact, I remember a very interesting speech given by Abdul about that. But I can say, without doubt, there are three things that are going to happen over the next few few years. And it's not as far as you think, because there is, in computer science, a razor, which means it's something that's a given, like Occam's razor, that says the power of computers is going to double every 2 years. So think about where we've come, where we're going to be in just 10 short years. Number one, we're going to rely more and more on computers, period. Number two, because of that, our society is going to evolve at an ever-rapid pace. We will never have a culture that lasts for even a single generation. And number three, computers will either bring us together or tear us apart. About that tearing us apart, I do remember we were traveling to Phoenix, Arizona to see my mother on Easter. And we had arrived at the airport. My wife and I had gotten through the security line. My daughters, who were traveling with us, were on the other side of the security line. They were having trouble getting through. And when I looked over at that screen that said flight arrival and departure, I saw the most dreaded message you can ever see in an airport security screen. System rebooting. System rebooting. There were no flights leaving. No one was getting through security. The system was down. Fortunately, we had cell phones. My daughter was calling us frantically. They won't let us through security. I said, well, don't worry. They can't take off. The security system is down. The planes won't fly. Well, that was going fairly well until all those people on the tarmac who had to get out of those planes that were landing said, we got to get out. So they brought the planes in. They let them off. And then there were a whole another set of planes coming in. So they said, well, we got to get these empty planes out. So they loaded those planes with myself and my wife. My daughters were still on the other side of security. But don't worry, they're just loading the planes. They won't take off until the system is fixed. And then they closed the door and they started backing away from the gate. It looks like we're taking off. You'll have to catch the next flight. So technology is either going to put us together or tear us apart. One way or the other. That's life in the computer age. Madam Toastmaster.